interesting where worship goes sometimes, where our communication with our Father in heaven goes sometimes. I think it's funny how God lines things up. Because this morning I want to talk about worship. I want to talk about the power of worship, what it really means to worship, and what it looks or doesn't look like. There's always one thing in our faith that keeps us grounded, that keeps us knowing, that keeps us in that place of knowing, God, you're just so real. For me, that's worship. That's the place where I feel grounded. That's the place where I feel like I know God the most. And sometimes it's overwhelming for me to be able to sing to my Father, to lay it all out there, to really open myself up and say, God, all I am is yours. All I have is yours. But I want to shift kind of what some of our expectation is with worship and what worship looks like. Because I think that most people look at worship as standing on a Sunday and singing some songs and feeling pretty good and going home. But it is so much more than that. It goes so far beyond that moment. Worship is an opportunity that most of us actually don't take the full advantage of. I know I don't all the time. And again, in order to take the full advantage of it, we have to actually shift our thinking on it, of what it looks like, because it's not just music, it's expression. Is worship singing songs about Jesus that make us feel good? Is it expressing what's within our hearts to God? And how? What does it look like? Why do we sing songs on Sunday and call it worship? And what does God want from me? What does he want when we worship? I'm hoping that this morning I can demystify worship and also bring awe and wonder to worship for you. Because we have some weird expectations. I mean, it's church, it can be kind of weird sometimes. But we have weird expectations. I mean, we're all weird people, right? I'm not the only one, right? I hope I'm not the only one. I love you, Kathleen. Yeah, it can be weird. I mean, all of church is kind of weird. We all get together one day a week. We sing songs. We listen to someone talk. We have a bunch of coffee and Timbits, and then we go home. Like, if I read the Bible, I don't see that anywhere. But you know what I do see? I see community. I see people getting together and saying, Jesus, we love you, together. Praying for one another, encouraging one another. That's what I see, and that's what we're doing. So I want to talk about the 3 stages of worship and do it in the least religious way possible by giving you 3 steps. None of these stages or steps happen in order. None of them happen at the same time. Oftentimes we experience one and not the other. So when I give 3 stages, I'm not talking about, trying to religiousize or give you 3 keys or 3. That's not what I'm trying to do. You understand that, right? I'm just simply giving you 3 things to recognize that take place during worship. Is that cool? Everyone on the same page? So the first stage, or the first thing that happens, is expression. Now, it's the first hurdle that we face when coming into worship. Because it really does take an emotional and a physical connection. It takes a physical standpoint to step into expression. If you don't believe me, wives, turn to your husband and ask him how he's really feeling. And see how many words come out of his mouth. Is it one or is it a lot? Right? Expressing can be hard, fellas. Now, if you do it the opposite way, you can see how easy it is for other people. Husbands, ask your wives how they're really feeling and see what happens if you dare. No. Expression is different for everybody. How we express ourselves, how we dress, how we look, how we just hold our actions. But how do we express ourselves to our Father? What does that look like? And can we call it worship? Yes, we can. We can call it worship. How we choose to outwardly express our worship is important. Music is a very universal avenue for expression. It's to most people, if you think back to different points in your life, there's songs that speak to you. Right? You flick on a song, your girlfriend just broke up with you, and it's like the cheesiest song comes on, and you're like, my heart, they get me. They understand who I am. It's a universal expression. We oftentimes connect in different ways. That's why we use music on Sundays as an expression of worship. Because most people connect through music. It's an easy way to connect with one another to our Father. It's just an artistic, beautiful platform. I think most of us can agree. If you don't, you're not my friend. No, I'm just kidding. Music has been around for a very long time. King David, wrote the Psalms, most of which are songs. They were his expression. That's how he chose to express himself to his Father. It's not the only avenue, though. There's so many more. Think of what you're good at. Just what you are good at. Are you good at farming? Are you good at woodworking? Are you good at taking care of your kids? Are you good at cooking? What are you good at? What gifts has God given you to express yourself? I want you to know that those things are worship. Those things are expressions to our Heavenly Father, saying, God, look what you've given me. Look what you've given me and how beautiful I can make it as a reflection of your goodness. It's pretty amazing when you begin to look differently at worship, how much it influences our entire lives. Because it no longer just becomes about Sunday morning. It becomes about every single day expressing worship to our Father. Expressing our love and adoration through what we do good. There are some people who love grammar who are just hating the way I'm using good right now. You did good. God is so good, and he's given you gifts to express yourself. Don't discount those gifts. And don't just cast them off to the side, because he's given you those gifts to express the deep things in your heart. And that is worship. That is expression. Pretty cool, huh? There's this friar, his name was Brother Lawrence. He lived in the 1600s. This guy was really, really interesting because until after he died, no one really understood him that much. He had a very deep, deep, deep relationship with God, and he would worship God in everything that he did. And people would actually travel to watch him do certain things because of how deep his worship was. So the number one thing that people would travel to watch him do was wash dishes. Can you believe it? Can you imagine just saying, you know what I would really love to do right now? Watch someone do dishes. This sounds ridiculous. But people would travel to watch him do dishes because of this deep, deep love he had for God. And he would express himself in worship while he did those dishes. And the depth of his relationship with God would shine through as he did dishes. And it was mystifying and overwhelming. And people couldn't help but to watch him do dishes because of how incredible the reflection of his relationship with God was. Even in the most mundane things, we can express ourselves in worship. He would pray every single time he went to go do anything, saying, God, I'm about to put my mind off of you completely and do this thing. I'm paraphrasing. I mean, it was 1600, so it's hard for me to understand what he was saying. Yeah, I'm putting my mind off of you for a second, and I'm going to do this. But what I really love is for you to be with me while I'm doing this. For you to help me in what I'm doing. And then he'd go and do what he was doing, whether it's washing dishes, sweeping floors, cleaning. That was his job. And he'd step back after, look at it, and if it was done well, he'd say, God, thank you for being with me. Thank you for being by my side, because I know because this is done well, you are with me. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Expression is hard, but find out how you express yourself. And I dare you to stretch beyond yourself for a second. Express yourself a little more deeply, a little more openly. He knows everything about you anyway, so you might as well talk to him about it. The second stage, the second thing that takes place in worship is recollection. Recollection is something that's interesting because I have troubles with this one a lot of times, but the moments that I overcome it are incredible. Have you ever been in worship or in prayer and been sitting there and all of these thoughts start flooding into your head? Like, oh, I can't believe I did that. Anyone? Am I the only one? Or been there praying and you know, it's going really great, and then suddenly something from like way long ago pops into your head and you start processing through it. Has that ever happened to anyone? Recollection. You know, I've heard people say, well, I was just really under attack. You know, I was trying to worship, but then all this stuff started coming up. And, the enemy is really trying to get me. Have you heard someone say that, or have you said that yourself? I know I have. Been like, oh, the enemy's trying to get me. Have you ever thought to yourself, maybe it wasn't the enemy and it was God? Have you ever thought to yourself, maybe that wasn't Satan trying to get you, it was God trying to get you? It was God trying to bring up some things that he wants to heal in your life, that he wants to restore in your life. He wants to cause you to recall so that you can actually be free to express. Ooh. Gave me the chills. I don't know about you, but I love being free. I just hate the process that takes me there. Right? It's hard. When that stuff comes up, we don't want to feel it. We don't want to walk through it again. They hurt me. Wah. You know, we whine our way through life most of the time. Or I do. Ask my wife. But the reality of what Christ did for us is very confronting. Because what he did on that cross was give us new garments, was shift our identity so that we could be free. And we sit there with all this stuff, and he brings it up because he wants us to give it to him. We're hanging on to guilt, we're hanging on to shame, and he's sitting there going, I paid for that. Give me what I paid for. I had this funny picture this morning when I was having my coffee. It was Jesus as a repo man. He's like coming to knock on the door. We've got all this stuff that we've been hanging on to that we didn't pay for, that we can't pay for, that even our death isn't good enough to pay for. We've got all this guilt, this shame, and this sin that we've got it packed away into a corner, trying to hide it so that the repo man doesn't take it away. Because, the stuff, it's kind of like a kid in a poopy diaper. It's like it's warm, it's smelly, but it's mine. That's what it's like. We hang on to this garbage. And it's mine. And he comes knocking on the door and goes, hey, so you've got all this stuff that you can't afford. I want to take it. And we sit there and we go, no, it's mine. I want to keep my guilt. But we don't realize the power of the cross to heal. We don't realize the power of the cross to restore. He begins to recall things in our minds so that we can fully be free. And he goes, I paid for it, so I'm taking it. Let me in so I can take it. So when I died on that cross, I took it and it died with me. Are you going to keep it or are you going to let it go? Are you really going to live in the freedom that he designed you to live in? Are you really going to live in the white garments? He prepared a better place for you. He created for you a new identity. Jesus, the repo man, is knocking on the door. Are you going to let him in or put another lock on there? The other problem with that whole thing is we think that, God is going to look at me a certain way. If I let him in, what's he going to say about my life? Most of us don't want to hear from God because of what he might say, because I'm so overwhelmed with shame. And that brings me to an interesting interaction that Jesus had with a lady at a well. Most of us who've been Christians for any period of time know the story of the woman at the well. That entire conversation that he was having with her was about worship. I don't know if we realize that, but the stages took place within that conversation that he was having with the woman at the well. There was this incredible interaction that took place. Jesus stood there and said, "Where is your husband?" And the lady said, "Well, I don't have a husband." He said, "That's right. You have a whole bunch of them. And you're not even living with the one that you're married to." And he started mentioning these things. He said, if you would allow me the water that I have, you would no longer thirst. The water that I have to give would cause you to never thirst again. And what was her reaction? Not, "Oh, I feel a whole bunch of shame right now because he just pointed out my stuff." No, she leaned into it and saw the freedom and the healing that was in his words. And she ran to a city and said, "Look, there's this guy over here, and he told me everything about myself." Did Jesus tell her everything about herself? No. He pointed out some things that he wanted to heal, and he brought healing to it. He recalled some things in her life. And he said some words to her that were echoing his desire for eternity. He said, "There'll come a day where people worship me in spirit and in truth." Allowing his love to wash over them, the truth about their identity to come through, and the expression of their spirit to burst forth. Am I making sense? The last stage that we walk through is expectancy. It's funny, when we finish recalling all the garbage, all we recall are the victories that we've won. The victories that God has walked us through. We begin to see how big he really is each time we walk through those victories. We begin to see that God is bigger than the boogeyman, like the VeggieTales song. He's bigger than Godzilla and the monsters on TV. We begin to see how big he is against the monsters of our own lives. And it makes us easier to actually walk through heavier and heavier stuff because of the victories that he's placed in our lives. That's the power of recollection when we gain freedom. And then we begin to expect, because we're building this incredible relationship with him, we begin to expect him to show up. We begin to expect that he's going to be there. It's weird to expect God to be a part of your life. We can actually expect it. You know, I know a lot of Christians, and I've known a lot of different types of Christians and been a part of a lot of different congregations and different churches. And I've seen people with different expectations of God. And I've seen people with no expectations of God that don't expect him to show up, that don't expect him to be personal. And I sit there and I go, why? Why wouldn't you expect him to be a part of your life? We sing all these incredible songs and all these incredible things about Jesus. And we know the power of the cross because we talk about it. And we know all of these things, but do we actually believe that he's going to show up? Do we actually believe that he's going to be a part of our lives? Because we should. You should expect that he's there present. You should expect that his desire for you to be healed is actually greater than your desire to be healed. I'm not just talking about emotional healing. I'm talking about physical healing. No parent is sitting there looking at their kid who's hurt themselves going, You deserved it. Well, maybe a little bit. No, just kidding. But no parent who's walking their kid through incredible pain is sitting there going, oh, you get what you get. They're sitting there going, if I could take this from you, I would. And that's what Jesus is doing. He's sitting there going, let me take this from you. You don't deserve to walk through this. I paid for it. It's not even yours. Let me have it. That guilt, that shame, that depression, let me have it. Let me into those areas that you haven't let anyone else into. Let me in so that I can show you who you really are. You're powerful. There's something that happens in worship when we really express, when we begin to see how big God really is, and when we begin to expect him to show up. Something happens that's overwhelming. We actually commune with Jesus. We actually come face to face with our Father in heaven. There's a conversation that God is having about your life that he wants you to be a part of. He himself is sitting in the heavens saying, oh my goodness, look how amazing they are. Look how incredible my child is. Do you see it? I just wish they would hear me. The only thing that holds us back from hearing God is ourselves. It's the guilt and shame, the fear of what's he going to say to me. But I want you to know he only has loving words to speak to you. He only wants to speak encouragement to you. He wants you to be free. His desire for you to experience his love is greater than your desire. He cares deeply for you. Is this making sense? I want to invite the worship team to come back up. And I want to have just a couple moments just to pray, to speak some things, if that's okay. Because I just feel this sense of God wanting to bring freedom. I mean, he's our dad. He wants us to be free. So if you would be willing, let's journey together. Is that cool? Is it turned off? One. There we are. Let's just stand together. There's an old hymn called Jesus Paid It All. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. My sin had left a crimson stain, but he washed it white as snow. Jesus paid it all. If you would just close your eyes with me. I just see that there's weights on people's shoulders. But Jesus paid it all. I can see that there's people that are walking through some pretty hefty stuff right now. But I want you to remember that Jesus paid it all. There's people with pain in their bodies. And see, there's a left knee. Someone who's been having some pressure pain issues in their left knee. And shoulders. People who are having trouble even raising their arms. I want you to remember that Jesus paid it all. There's something that happens when we express ourselves in worship. We expect Jesus to show up. And I really feel that Jesus is going to speak to some of you this morning. Not just, it's not through me. He's going to speak to you this morning. He has some encouragement for you this morning. If you would be willing to listen. There's peace in your storm. Holy Spirit, come. Be here with us. As we're worshiping, as we're singing this song, if your mind goes to certain places, invite Jesus there. The Bible said when we ask for the Spirit, we won't get a serpent, we won't get a stone, we'll get the Spirit. So Holy Spirit, we ask for you this morning. Jesus, we ask for you this morning. And we thank you that you won't give us anything apart from yourself. We thank you. Right now, I want to release healing into this place. I want to release the power and presence of Jesus into this place. God is passionate about you. He loves you. He wants to see you free more than you want to be free. And his love for you is overwhelming. And there's no place that you can run to separate yourself from God. King David in the Bible even said, if I go to the depths of hell, even there you are. So there is no place, Jesus, that you cannot